All right. Another episode of Write Once, Read Many. This time, covering chapter 23.1. Alright, got that classic notification out of the way. Just letting the speed draw go. We got Clock Blocker in the corner. Or, well, I mean in the middle. Sorry, we've got Tecton in the corner. We've got Clock Blocker in the middle bottom section. Hey Greg, hey Vic. Vic, do you want to tell us a bit about what we're seeing here? Looks like one of the adepts is being clock block frozen. I believe it's final hour, or stand still as she was called when she was in the wards. Oh, 13th hour, right? Not final hour. That's it. That's literally a different character. 13th hour. Yeah. The main question I had, I guess, is, what's the hand bit at the end of the string? Was that, like... Oh, is that Clock Blocker's glove? Ah, yeah, okay, got it. Right. See, I was confused because he's holding onto the string at the bottom. That's the part that, But, yes, I see it now. Alright, so, Vic says, Hoyden's shoes on the right, Jouster's shoulder right in front of, Taylor, everyone's snoozing. Yeah, okay. Fair. I think it's funny that Tecton's power armor makes him stand up while snoozing. Well, as far as the audience participation question, it's 23.1. Which team of wards from the story would you want to join? I wonder. And then for themes, I'm not sure like a one-word way to put this, but Taylor being like out of her element, I think is a definite theme. And she like gets caught by surprise in the fight, and she's not coordinated with her teammates, and she's being told to do further restrictions, so it's kind of like a lot of ways that she's out of her element or constricted, maybe. Vic says, yeah, that's what Taylor said, lol. His arms are just slumped. Um, yeah. I remember that part. Like, she can vaguely tell that Tecton is hypnotized because he's slightly more slumped than normal. Yeah, but I guess a theme is new beginnings and forging new relationships. All right. All right. And then I think I'm just going to get into the chapter itself. So it starts off with Defiant picking up Taylor from her cell. She's been in jail for a week, and she's going by Weaver now, of course. At the very start, she thinks it's Bakuda for a second because of his like digital voice. She's just always having like minor PTSD flashbacks. It's just little ones. And she quips right away that she, if you'd asked me a week ago, I wouldn't have been happy to see you. And then he's very low humor. He's like, you'll be back in jail at the end of the day. Sometimes it's funny to imagine these badass characters with like nerd voices. Like just imagine if Defiant had a non-intimidating digital voice. That'd be pretty funny to me. But she's read a whole bunch of books, a whole stack of them apparently. And he's surprised that she read all of them, but I mean, that just proves that he didn't really know Taylor before. If he knew this fool, he'd know that the only thing she loves more than piles of bugs is piles of books. Yeah, they're trying to like relate to each other, and they're both like, we were team leaders. We know what it's like. Nod in solidarity. And, Defiant is listing the kinds of pressures that he had been dealing with, and they both cut out personal time and stuff because it was the easiest thing to self-justify, even though they both acknowledged the costs in the long run. And they sort of Taylor has a moment where she regrets what she's done to Miss Militia by putting her in the hot seat, but then Defiant's just like, nah, don't even worry about it. She'll be fine. Then they go to see the warden of this medium security prison, and Taylor is constantly worrying about how people view her, even the other prisoners who she doesn't know and doesn't intend to get to know. She's like, they're all staring at me. What did they think of me? Someone who'd killed someone who was very famous. She's got a lot of internal turmoil. And she's in an adult prison because she was tried as an adult. Sorry about the sneezing. Oh no, it's happening again. Oh no, the second sneeze isn't coming. This is terrible. I was in the stun-locked state of needing to sneeze, but not sneezing the second time. Anyway, hopefully that's passed. The warden is telling Taylor that she's not to get in any fights and stuff, and if she does get in a fight, she should just, take a beating. She even says, the line here I feel like is a standout line of, if a fight happened to erupt while you were en route, and it came down to you fighting back or getting stabbed, I expect you to get stabbed and then graciously thank your attacker. You understand? Yeah, they have some back and forths, where it's mostly just Taylor going like, I know, I get it. And then she brings up that Taylor. They notice that Taylor took all the lice off of all the crotches of all the inmates, and then she's like, "It is true that I did that. I admit what you're saying, but on the other hand, my power is always on, and I don't want to sense that." Um, so she comes up with this convoluted caustic substance in a bucket. Vic says, "We had those lice for a reason." It's all about the fear of the known. Yeah, the fear of the known lice. Um, uh, and then, yeah, so she's like, "You should set up a bucket and I'll kill the bugs in the bucket." And Defiant's like, "We've got other things to deal with right now. Just go get ready to leave." And then, she suits up in her weaver costume, which is not actually made of spider silk. So it's like got armor panels, but she thinks it's like sucky armor. That's right. It says right here, sucky armor. The warden is getting after Defiant. She's poking him in the chest like he's not a giant robot man, and he's all like, this lady's really intimidating. It's making me think of Dragon. I'm having all kinds of crazy thoughts." And then, but anyway, they leave this this fenced-in, barbed-wired prison. You know, your standard medium security bit in the United States. And then Defiant keeps talking to Taylor like their conversation wasn't interrupted at all. He's like, "We're alike in some ways. We've both been leaders. We've both made our mistakes, and we've faced a form of detention for it. You with your prison, me with my retirement." And she's sort of, "Oh, we're doing this again." And then she asks about Dragon, and then Defiant says something cryptic, and Taylor still has no idea what's going on with Dragon. Totally clueless. And then they use Defiance. I assume it's the Uther. They're in a dragon craft, and they are flying to New York. And Defiant's trying to sort of warn Taylor that basically, even though she's definitely in the wards in terms of the overall organization, if a team doesn't pick her up, she's not going to be able to do any like fighting, and will probably be just relegated to really background or menial tasks. And she can't really go on the only team where she would have a guaranteed slot, Miss Militia's team, because while Miss Militia's backing her, there's too much conflict of interest for her to be in Brockton Bay. So they're trying to like trot her out in front of these other team leaders and get somebody to pick her up. And we get to see a lot of people there. They sort of they arrive at the New York sort of the New York. I guess she leaves in her civilian clothes and she puts on the costume once they get to the Protectorate headquarters. But the place they're in, it was like the ward's headquarters in Brockton Bay, only instead of the interchangeable pieces being like burnished steel or whatever, it's like gold and stuff, and marble and whatever. It's like, apparently this is where they take investors for merchandise and stuff to wow them. So Defiant introduces everybody that they're meeting up with. It's like a whole bunch of them. There's Prism is there, and obviously we know who Prism is, and Prism gives one of those like McGonagall from Harry Potter looks, where she just like flattens her mouth out and is just like, because she got beat up and she got an injury that didn't just hurt, but like reminded her of her specific trauma that gave her her powers. Um, And then they've got Rhyme, who's now leading the LA team now that Alexandria's dead. Revel. Let's see here. Yeah. Prism, Rhyme, Revel from Chicago, who I don't think we've seen Revel, but she shall come up more. Greg said she got beat up and her boyfriend got beat up. Oh, bees. Oh, anaphylaxis. So Revel has a sort of like Japanese themed costume. There's like a kimono and there's a hanging lantern, which is the actual like power. Oh, you know where we've seen Revel? I think that Revel was in the background as one of Mirrodin's capes. And then let's see here. We've got Dispatch from Houston. Dispatch his power is not mentioned here, but his power is pretty sick. It's like he creates a little like sped up time bubble that he can either like use to like do medical aid because he's like trained really well in medicine, or he's like got super strength, so you're just trapped in there and he can like beat you up, and because of the fact that it's like a sped up time bubble, it seems like it happens instantly, that he just like walks up to somebody and then the fight's over. Pretty cool. Vic says a sexy kimono, which Taylor talks about at length. Yeah, I mean, Taylor never says I'm into women, but Taylor might be into women a little bit. She wore a white skin-tight outfit with straps at the shoulders, legs ending mid-thigh, giving her a degree of modesty that the stylized crimson kimono didn't. The kimono hung loose around her, held in place more by belts and what must have been wires in the fabric, elbow length and just barely long enough to be modest. Her shoulders were bare and narrow. Yeah. Vic, she keeps being like, it would have been scandalous if she weren't wearing clothes. Oh, that is what she's like. Oh, Taylor. Keep your costume on, Taylor. Then there's the wards teams from these specific people. Jouster came with Prism from New York. Vantage came from Los Angeles with Rhyme. Tecton is there from Chicago with Revel. Hoyden is there with Dispatch from Austin. And then Clock Blocker has joined in the fun, but does not have... I do not believe there's any other Brockton Bay representative with him. Aside from Defiant, I guess, but he's not really a Brockton Bay guy anymore. So I think we get very little Vantage content overall. Apparently Vantage was a black guy in a forest green and silver costume that looked a touch flamboyant at a glance. We get some more Hoyden content later. Hoyden is like like Dispatch is a desperado, and Hoyden is just a second desperado, but girl. Vic says Clock Blocker is always asking to be wherever Taylor is, and then getting in trouble for it. Yeah. This guy totally doesn't have a crush on Taylor or anything. That'd be crazy to say that. And then Jessica is here, Jessica Yamada. And then our favorite Glenn Chambers. That may sound sarcastic, but I personally think Glenn is a hilarious character. I love his sort of weird interactions with Taylor and how she can't like handle the pushback. Um, let's see here. Um, bu- 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 Yeah, they vaguely mentioned that they're trying to root out the Cauldron capes and they're doing audits of all the capes and stuff. Um, and then Miss Yamada sort of brings it back to Taylor, puts her on the spot, asking what she's thinking. Taylor is self-censoring and thinking about how she's self-censoring, but after saying she's intimidated and asked how she deals with that, she says, "I'm not certain how I would now," instead of saying, "I would put bugs on all of you, bugs in your faces, bugs in the mouths." Which is, that's the actual answer. What do you do when you're nervous? Put bugs on them. And then Defiant tries to sort of set the agenda. He's talking about how they've had villains join them before, although usually secret, and they've had experienced capes, and both of these things have caused problems, and they're going to see how they can integrate Taylor. Jouster sort of pokes fun at all this, and he's like, "Ugh, it's a lot of effort to be going for. Fuck this person." And then Clockblocker laughs, and then when asked about it, Hoyden answers for Clockblocker and is like, "This is the person who killed Alexandria. Are you kidding me?" And then we get some classic Clockblocker. I feel like this is one of the things where if it hadn't happened, then we would have been clamoring for it to happen someday. Clockblocker gives us, "She's an absolute nightmare to fight. I've been on the receiving end enough times to know. So when Miss Militia told me she was in custody, I started asking questions, trying to get a sense of what was happening and when. I don't even have to be here, and I'm picking up extra patrols later this week to make up for it. But I wanted to come to say this. I don't like her, not really. But if my word counts for anything, as someone who's only spent half the time dealing with the shit in Brockton Bay that she has, we want her on our side. Somehow, in some form. Because the alternative sucks." Taylor thanks him quietly, very meek. And then Hoyden's sort of trying to tally up what she's done. She's probably, I imagine her holding up fingers. She killed Alexandria, and what? She was there for Leviathan and the Slaughterhouse 9, for Echidna. And then Clockblocker is like, "She went head to head with each of those, right? Like, you weren't just there, you were in the thick of it, exchanging blows." And, Vic says, "I don't like her, but I came here to tell everyone that we need to let her on our team. Preferably my team, so I can keep a close eye on her. Perhaps we could kiss so that I could examine." I just imagine Dennis being like oblivious but terrible of the feelings that I am imparting on him. I don't know that he actually has a crush on Taylor, but it's more fun to talk like he does. Vic. "Trust me, everyone, you don't want her around you, but I can handle it." He is just obsessed with her. Yeah, it's funny. When they even when he says the "you were in the thick of it, exchanging blows," like that, it's just like, when you actually like say the things that were happening, they would sound so insane. Like, she went into melee combat one-on-one with Leviathan. Even if she had a really good weapon, that's bananas. She has a regular body. Yeah. Anyway, so Prism says that they're gonna do interviews and power evaluations, and Dispatch is like, "No, that's ridiculous. I didn't drive all the way here from Texas for a powers evaluation." And so he demands that they use thinkers to monitor her while they do a field exercise where these various wards team leaders, as well as Taylor, will form a little super group, and they will battle the adepts, who we've heard about in background notes, but we don't really know up to this point. They we'll talk about it in a minute, but they have like a pyramid structure of like tiered dudes, where it's like 1 top level, 2 next level, down to 5th level. So there's 15 of them, which is a lot of capes, but it's not that many capes. Like, unfortunately, in fucking Brockton Bay, I'm pretty sure there are more than that number of, at the story start, of, like, white supremacist aligned capes. So, 15 sounds like a lot until you remember how big some of these other groups are. Although, since they're competing for, like, the spots on each rung, then they might be like, they might be made of slightly sterner stuff than your average. You're not gonna have like super gutter tier powers as though they were from one of the like Uber Elite or like merchant style villains. Anyway, so they tell her that they're gonna do this thing, and she sort of gets kitted out with some supplies from Prism, but they don't really have what she needs anyway. She's worried that they're giving her just enough leeway so that she'll mess up and won't be able to do anything. And Dispatch tells them that the adepts don't kill, so if there's a problem, it's her fault. Basically. And then we get another little, get a second page break. So we're on to the third section. So they're walking on the streets of New York City, and Jouster is telling them, well, first off, Jouster is like, everybody should know these guys, right? And then Tecton's like, just tell us who the people are. Obviously, Taylor doesn't know. And he does the classic, like, he's gonna call her Skitter by accident, then calls her Weaver. So Taylor does say what she knows. She says, they're wizards, or they pretend to be, like Nearden. Apparently their leader is a time travel guy called Epoch, although I don't think we ever really learned about his power. I gotta imagine. I agree with Gru. Time travel powers would be obnoxious to deal with. Although there aren't that many powers that are fun to deal with. Yeah, so it's 1 tier 1, 2 tier 2s. I wasn't sure if it was a 1 tier 5, 2 tier 4s, but yeah. So the lower numbered dudes are more powerful, assumedly, or we're better at moving up the ladder within the group. And then Hoyden complains about the transportation in the city, and Jouster gives us some world building. He talks about how there's different groups. He's part of the Lancer group that is fast response, people who can fly or who can sort of zoom about. He has little minor teleports, but he's just very mobile because he can like do weird stuff with his power, like suction himself to stuff and then minor teleport and whatever. So I'm guessing there's a lot of ways he can like move around and stuff. Um, and he's mad at Taylor specifically because Flechette was on his team and was going to be the leader of his wards group. So he's got a beef. Apparently there are some people who ride like bikes specialized for the subway systems and have little computers to go down the right tunnels. I would feel fairly strange about, like, I don't know. I know that they have little computers to guide them. I would be like, a train's gonna get me. I'd be very paranoid down there, I think. But there's a funny moment where Vantage says that he likes the thing where they ride along with adult heroes. And everybody else rolls their eyes. Oh, when they talk about Flechette leaving and joining the Undersiders, then Taylor tries to play it cool about her being gay, but then Joust is just like, "It was the doll girl. They're all gays." And then Vantage gives him the punch on the arm. I think it's a good little moment. And then they sort of, it seems as though Taylor wasn't expecting this, but she gets people start talking through their headsets, and they're, I think it says a male voice. I'm not sure if it's Glenn or who, but somebody says, "Talk us through everything you're doing, Weaver." And so she tells them like how she's putting bugs on everybody. They keep telling her different things like lethal and venomous bugs are not allowed. You know that. And so she keeps like dialing things back, and they're like, "You can't have a big scary looking swarm." And then she takes out. First she's like, "Maybe I'll use ladybugs," as like a sarcastic answer. And then instead she realizes there's tons of bugs. Or I mean the butterflies, so she takes a bunch of butterflies and covers up her other bugs with the butterflies. And she has to like look and visually inspect it to make sure that the butterflies are like covering the spots the cameras can see. It's pretty funny stuff. Glenn's getting on her nerves, and she doesn't even know who he is. Also, she looks down on Glenn because Taylor hates fat people and has really weird specific issues around fat phobia. But Vic said, "I would be embarrassed, like, well, then I formed the bugs into pictures of cheese." Vic says, "'Cause Taylor thinks he's fugly." It is true. It is true that she thinks that. And I mean, we shall learn later on, and obviously I'll talk about it when it happens, but Glenn deceptively dresses like shit on purpose to be like, haha, I must convey a certain image of kind of looking like shit. God, Vic follows up with, "And she hates fugly people." My God, it is true. That amorphous swarm, it conveys the wrong ideas. It's disturbing to any onlookers. And when she at first is like unsure if Glenn's serious about like the different things he's saying, then like Clock Blocker's starting to laugh at him. Hoyden's doing stuff like ducking around so that she can't be seen on camera to try and like physically stay out of sight so that Glenn doesn't focus on her, because she swears so much that she's always having to do media training with him. Oh, it's Alien Cat Daddy. Saying, "That's why I dress like shit too." Good. So yeah, we get some classic stuff like "we can hear you," when all the teens are poking fun at Taylor. Um, and then Glenn hits them with something that puts the fear of Glenn in them, that they may all need some lessons in decorum, which would probably be hours and hours of them having to go through very boring rote stuff with him until they accepted defeat. Basically, like the brainwashing the um the Yangban do on people, except with a much less mental torture and much more. Well, there's a medium amount of mental torture. They're still using it to force them to act and say the right things. So, just a little taste of the Yangban. And Glenn is said to have like a little cult of personality around him within the PRT, but and then Clockblocker is telling her that like if Glenn's focused on her from the start, she'll never get any peace from him, basically. Defiance, disappointed in Weaver. We get a lot of stuff. There's a funny moment where they're pushing their way into the building, and Tecton just pushes the locked door until the door frame cracks out. I think that's really fun. There's also whenever Taylor complains too, that they're like, we could just call this whole thing off. I mean, we don't have to test you, and it's like, but they sort of explain the adepts a little bit more, how they don't actually hold territory, so they can't like push them out of territory, or and they're not getting in like turf wars with other gangs, which is kind of interesting. Oh, Vic says it's like that Tim Robinson sketch where he pulls a push door. Yeah, it's exactly like that, where he just pulls it until it comes, like, he pulls off part of the door frame and opens it the way he wants to open it. Alien Cat Daddy says, I remember always wanting this part of the story to be longer. Just Taylor with the BRT. Yeah, I really like the like her having to deal with all these people who are much more kind of well adjusted than her normal teammates. Like these people may still have problems, but for parahumans, they're very very well rounded. Oh yeah, Jouster calls out that he'd be the team lead, and then Taylor says she'll be recon. And then first he says she'll have to be recon if she's limiting herself to butterflies. Then she sort of turns it around and says she's not limiting herself to recon. And then when Vantage asks if butterflies bite, then she says they don't have the mouth parts that can bite. And I think it's really funny when Hoyden says, so are you like super smart or something? And she just goes, no. I've always found that like really, really funny, especially the voice reading in the audiobook. But Vic says, like Hoyden is their PR nightmare versus bitch. Big difference. Lol. Yeah. Yeah. Then they sort of with Taylor's bugs, figure out that there's probably like 3 of them, and there's 2 people upstairs. Of the 3 of them are having sex, and then she thinks the 2 people they're having sex with are just like not capes, which turns out to be incorrect. So they get surprised, but they find that one of these people is Felix Swoop, which I find to be a hilarious cape name, Felix Swoop. But he controls birds to a certain extent, and also those birds become immune to fire and can catch on fire and can explode a little bit. That's pretty cool. It's a pretty neat power. Alien Cat Daddy says, I love her basically explaining why she's been able to kick their asses for so long. Yeah, I'm not 100% sure if they fully understood her capabilities before, like, this portion where she's explaining everything to them. Like, I guess there's ways they could know, but it's very easy for me to imagine that it's just like they don't have a grasp on the full extent of everything she can do. Craig says that Felix Swoop's power is Angry Birds. Yes. So before they go up, then Jouster's trying to yell to the public to back up. And then Taylor moves her swarm out and starts doing a swarm voice that's evenly distributed at street level so that it won't possibly carry up to the people they're trying to get the drop on the 9th floor. There's a lot of like funny moments to me where she'll like think things like, so weird to be doing this with a veneer of legitimacy. So they talk through the process of letting the crowd know. She talks through the process of how she's using silk cords that she prepared on the way to hamper the birds on the balconies. She's like putting bugs in their clothes, and she's like trying to tie them in. You know, all the stuff that she does to people when they're her enemies. Just put string everywhere. Just get ready for any possibility. Glenn is annoyed that she's using butterflies to cover up other bugs because he wants her to only use butterflies. They don't tell her this here, but they want to see how she can handle restrictions and like if she can follow directions and actually allow them to tell her what to do, even when it's suboptimal. And that's why they're putting her against villains who won't like kill her if they mess up or whatever. There's a funny moment where Tecton objects to going in last. He goes, I'm the toughest of us. And then Hoyden says, don't flatter yourself. It is funny that he would say something like that with her there. She seems like fairly unkillable. Like, I think it would take a lot to take her down based on what we see later. And then, she's directing them where the enemies are up there. And everyone just sort of goes in and, like takes everybody out very, very quickly. Let's see here. They sort of talk through what Jouster's power is, how he can channel stuff through his lance and also do like minor teleports and stuff. I guess it's super speed and not teleports. I could have sworn it was little teleports, but I guess I'm wrong. Clock Blocker freezes one of the capes, the woman Paddock, and then which is not what we're viewing here. And then Hoyden and Vantage bust in and basically like crack some skulls. Vantage takes out Felix Swoop. Oh, Vantage is the one with the little teleports. And he takes out Swoop by just like hitting him really hard in the collarbone, with a little bit of super strength. And yeah, then that is when we realized that one of the two supposed groupies was actually a fourth adept. Oh no! Who we see here. She's the one who can knock everybody out, but she has to knock herself out too, which is like a good power for a team, but it's one of those powers that it's like the drawback is really bad. Some powers' drawbacks are just awful. Taylor runs in, and then, Clock Blocker also freezes the non-cape woman as well, with his blocky power. Vic says she's using her power, and then person sleeping in a bed emoji. Or maybe it's just a bed emoji. It's very tiny. But yes. That's like how Vic's power is the standing perfectly still emoji. But yeah. We get Clock Blocker fires his newfound cord glove thing, gauntlet. He has the Tinker Tech glove, and he freezes it in time once it has caught around her, and then he's able to pull his hand out of the glove, which is fairly cool. And then she's still able to use her power, and she tells them of her new name, 13th Hour. And then as they're all knocked out, then Taylor's still conscious because she's got super brain. Her power is really good compared to other powers at keeping her brain going when it shouldn't be going. Vix is much cooler than her original name. I suppose 13th Hour is a good name, but I think Standstill is an alright name for someone with her power. I don't think it's terrible. But even without volition, and Taylor reminds us of her dream of Coil and scopolamine dream, where she was turned into a zombie. But yes, all the adepts get up. They start making phone calls to call in reinforcements. Taylor's bugs keep doing bug things. They're like stinging people, biting people. They're laying out threads. And then they're like, the adepts are like actually impressed with this, which I like. And then basically Taylor describes her power use as being like the aimless doodles in the margins of a notebook, which is fun. And then Felix Swoop has an accent, which is funny, and then he says curses, which is also very funny. Which makes Taylor think, I did not want to lose to these guys. And then she directs a cockroach at her own face, and because she's not wearing her normal spider silk costume, it's pretty easy for the cockroach to bite its way through the costume and then go into her mouth, and then it like sets off her gag reflex by going down her throat until she starts throwing up. It's like truly horrible, some of the things Taylor does, and she does this to herself, but then she does it to all her teammates. Greg says Taylor's so evil, so even puts bugs in her own mouth. Yeah, she's so evil that when she was born, she put a bug on her own forehead. So after it's sort of obvious that she's waking people up, then some other mind-altering cape, probably the other one that wasn't Felix Swoop, who Hoyden took down, makes her see her spiders and stuff as being huge and has like weird hallucinations. But she wakes up Tecton. Tecton power suit stumbles and like shakes the room, and then everybody wakes up. But then the problem is that 13th Hour enacts her power again, and then they all get knocked over. Then we get, but I was ready. A cockroach mobilized to set off my gag reflex a second time. God damn it. So gross. She even says so gross, but that was a genuine reaction of me just being like, ugh. But she even thinks to herself that she is not making any friends here when she wakes up Hoyden. Hoyden is able to easily block one of Felix Swoop's birds, but one hits Taylor, and everywhere where she just has costume fabric and not armor, it burns her. It's not like a terrible burn, but like, getting burned is not very fun. And then she gets the hallucination power put on her again. But then is able to get like enough bugs on the hallucination cape that I don't think he has the concentration to like keep like using his power on her. Okay, so Alien Cat Daddy says, why do you think she uses a roach? Like, why not any other bug? Greg says, agreed. You can choke on any bug, but roaches are guaranteed to make people unhappy. I think that if it was like some kinds of bug, like a lot of bugs wouldn't be big enough. Like if there was, I could probably take a whole bunch of ants before a gag reflex was set off, and then you'd have a pile of ants. I'm not sure why the cockroach. Maybe like I can imagine a lot of bugs wouldn't set it off. God. Vic says roaches are thick, and of course uses 2Cs. Oh my god. Alien says roaches have that throat girth. I'm sure they do. I'm sure that roaches got that throat girth. Yeah, Taylor does some fighting. She can tell that people are like reinforcements from both sides are fighting outside. And Taylor never finds out what Paddock's power is. She doesn't let that happen. And then she tases Paddock. I think. And then when she can't wake up Jouster at first, she like kind of hits his head in uh like picks him up and slams him down a little bit. Or no, she kicks his leg out from under him. That's what she does. I thought she had done the thing where you like kind of slam someone's head into the thing behind them. It's just like only Taylor. Jouster's kind of a bitch about it when she's like, wake up, clock blocker and Vantage. She tases another one of them. She's taking them. They're dropping like flies. She says she tases the hallucination guy, and then also wakes up clock blocker. Oh, clock blocker is the one who she hits his head on the ground. That's what I was thinking of. I was mixing up parts. Yeah, Vic says she does that to clock blocker. You're right. She slams clock blocker's head in the floor. And then it basically ends. But it just sort of and clock blocker says, you kicked their asses with butterflies. I cheated. The butterflies are superficial, decorative. No. If anyone asks, you kicked their asses with butterflies. She doesn't get this whole lying thing. She was one of those villains who was always busy telling the truth. And so she had a pretty definitive victory. Was the main reason they got back up, defeated 3 of them herself after the initial like skirmish where they all got out, reawakened and unclock blocked, etc. And the next scene is when they're back to the Gardner medium security prison. Defiant is walking her back in and is telling her that Rhyme was upset with her attitude during the test, and he doesn't even know what she was referring to, so he can't even help her out with that. The warden notices she's injured, and Defiant says that she was in the line of permitted duty. And then he says that he get like the superior's number. She insists on that. And she's like, we've set up a bug zapper for you to zap bugs with. And Taylor, she says she'll be good, but immediately thinks to herself, I'll kill some of the bugs, but I'll keep the spiders. No one will notice when this dead bug pile has no spiders. I think it's very, it's short-term thinking to think that no one will notice that there's no spiders in the mixed bug bucket. You should have only kept some spiders. It's kind of bending the rules, she thinks, says Vic, who is shaking her head. Alien says, she likes spiders. And then Vic yells, it's explicitly breaking the rules. Yeah. She's rereading a book. She's sitting there. She's feeling shitty about her burns. She was given some, like, over-the-counter painkillers, but she's still having problems. They're inconveniently placed, so no matter how she lays down, she's on some of her burns, it sounds like. Yeah, well, at the end she does say, breaking the rules, maybe, but it was something to occupy my thoughts. It made me feel just a little safer, a little more like myself. Yeah. So there was a lot going on in this chapter. I don't know if it was just a slower reading or what, but I think this is even longer than the lung chapter. I think it's a good one. It's got a nice little fight. She wins with like ingenuity. You get to see like several characters who you've never seen fight before fight. I think Jouster, Hoyden, and Vantage's powers are all like pretty cool. If you told me after this chapter, like, this is her new team, I would be like, yes, this is so good. Like, I love these guys, really. Some of the groupings she's put in the next few chapters are less adept than this group, but pun, because they were fighting the adepts. But it's true. And these guys are awesome. It's funny how some of them hate her. It's funny how they have a bunch of banter, and they're all taking each other down a peg a little bit, but in a fun way. Alien says, just another arc with the PRT would be amazing. Yeah, I think it could go a little longer, and that would probably help a little bit, but I get why it's not that way, because the story will start moving at a pretty breakneck pace at a certain point, and it kind of never stops from there. I guess there's always downtime and stuff. He's pretty good in this story about punctuating stuff to improve the pacing by not having it be all action. There's got to be an ebb and flow all the time. So I think that's actually well managed. But yes, I would have a hard time fitting another arc. I guess what I would do is I would just make arc 25 2 arcs, maybe. But then it wouldn't be as thematically coherent. I don't know. So I had said for the arc stuff, aside from this being like a good start off chapter for her new like setup post arc 22, that I liked that the last interlude was like a set of vignettes for Lung, and this is an entire arc of not only are there a bunch of page breaks and stuff between scenes, like to just like get to the heart of the matter over and over again, but it's also like vignettes, like every chapter is about like a different thing. Like this was about New York and the Adepts. The next one, wait, what's the next one again? The next one is Las Vegas and like a prisoner transfer, basically. And then there's it's just like that. Like she's in different cities. She's in like a totally different scenario. The only thing linking the chapters is that she's dealing with new situations in her life as Weaver, rather than like what her old life was like. But yes, I think that this arc has a great structure. I don't hear people talk about it too much, but I imagine that people like it. But I guess I don't know. It's Alien. Alien loves this stuff, and I'm a big fan. I think it's safe to say that this community has a lot of people who quite like Arc 23. Anyway, moving on from arc stuff to the characters. I did not put her name, but the Warden. And you know what? I'm gonna give a little also the prisoners. The prisoners. So the Warden, interesting character. It's a kind of a one-off character. Maybe I'm forgetting something, but I don't remember seeing her again in later chapters. She kind of reminds me of that like veteran cop that Defiant meets in his chapter where he's like tracking down the Slaughterhouse-9. Love the background characters and parahumans. They always do great work. As for the prisoners, I think Taylor is has this like idea that like, oh, they're all gonna crush in on me now that I show signs of weakness and stuff. I don't think the other prisoners want to cross paths with her. I don't think that they're gonna look at a burns on her arms and be like, she's in a weakened state, I'll get her now. They'll think, oh my god, this freak is always getting injured because she's always in fights. Like, I don't know. I just think that in the kind of scenario she's in, a bunch of unpowered people are not thinking, we're just about to get her. It's like, no, no, they don't want to tangle with you. Vic says, I don't think most of these prisoners are in for violent crime. Is this a men's and women's facility? No, it's just a women's medium security prison. I don't think that there are any men here. Yeah, but that's all I got to say about the people at Gardner. I guess it's interesting that they come up with a bucket solution and just a slight alternative. She's willing to compromise with Taylor. I guess that's something that's interesting and worth noting. Is she's willing to compromise with Taylor, even though she's literally a prison warden. Vic says, yeah, she's just paranoid. Lol. Yeah. We see Prism just for a moment, and Prism keeps them on track over the radio, as well as is there to frown, to not quite frown, but have a mouth that's a very thin line at Taylor. And to mentally say, you. Rhyme is there, and apparently she liked Taylor at the start, but by the end of it, she had her doubts. Great start, Taylor. Just a great start. Not alienating anyone at all. Dispatch, we see that he talks about not being in a leadership position before. Maybe he was referring to other people, but it certainly seemed like he was referring to himself when he said half the people aren't used to leadership. And then he doesn't like Taylor, but I think he's like a cool background character. Revel, like I say, we don't get much about her here. We shall see Revel again later. Vantage, he seems like a fun guy. I don't think he gets very much screen time, but he gets to do the teleport and then bash somebody across the room and then do a quip. He's like, I hit the bird guy. Better make a wishbone joke. But he could also make a wishbone joke if the enemy cape had the power to dress up like historical figures. So, probably should have kept that in his back pocket, actually. We get Hoyden. She is girl who swears a lot. Her power is awesome. Kind of wish we got more Hoyden content. Hoyden's like one of those Dark Horse favorites, a character who I think is quite well liked by the community, but was not actually meant to be a major player. She's just sort of there. Jouster. He verbally jousts with Weaver. Acquiring his name handily. Jouster seems like kind of an asshole, I guess, but it's hard to tell because he might just hate Taylor specifically, which is fair. Again, great power, cool guy in terms of what he can do. I want a lance that has elemental powers and also possibly like suction, and I get bursts of super speed. Yeah, that'd be nice. A lot of these powers sound pretty cool. Oh, then the adepts. We get to see that one of the adepts was a former ward. And then so they're the team members on PRT and Ward's team, or Protectorate and Ward's teams. They're like dropping like flies. They're getting poached to even villain teams and stuff. New York seems to have a bad record of now like two within like a month of each other defecting to different villain teams. Embarrassing. And we got Felix Swoop, of course. Amazing name. The leader we never see, Epoch. We don't learn what Paddock's power was, but hopefully it's that she can cause a stampede of horses to suddenly appear. That'd be a fun power for Paddock to have. We never learn the name of the weird hallucination cape that makes Taylor think spiders have giant spider legs. But you can't intimidate Taylor very easily. She's just like, these hallucinations only make me more powerful. Interesting team structure. Like many of the things in this arc, if we got to see more of these guys, I'd be into it. I think that's a good mark in the favor of the chapter, is that, or in the favor of the arc, and this individual chapter as well, but the fact that I'm left wanting more. Like, I'm like, give me more of this stuff. I'm never like, ugh, this is boring, or there's too much. It's always like, treats after treats. I don't know. I feel like we've already reached the point in the book where it's built up so much stuff that it can just like fling loads of capes at us. Like, you know, there's like a battle between like 9 different capes, and it's just like more than half of them we've never seen their power before, and yeah, it's fine. It works. And it's very easy to follow too, in my opinion. We can move on from the Adepts. We don't gotta talk about them much longer. Felix Swoop. Now to talk about Glenn. We barely get to see Glenn, but we get to see his annoying nature. I gotta say, the first time that I read this chapter, I was basically in the Taylor state of mind of like, this is crazy. You're asking me to do this with butterflies? I thought Glenn was a bit of an idiot. But the more that we'll see of Glenn, the more I'm like, I love this guy. What a crazy guy. All the non-parahumans who interact with parahumans a lot, like Glenn and Pigot and Kaye, like, I just think they're great because they're all such freaks, and they seem like they would be able to have powers, but they don't. I don't know. Glenn's a fun character. He's gonna make you fight with butterflies. He's going to tame even the most foul of mouths. And he'll look like shit doing it. Moving on for now from Glenn, we get to see Tecton. Tecton is basically just here to back Taylor up. Like, he's not like Clock Blocker where he's pulling extra shifts, but he just sort of waits his turn and then like sticks up for Taylor at the right times. I think like Tecton thinks Taylor is awesome. Not like a great friend or whatever, like just a worthy teammate, a powerful cape, and worth listening to, you know? So Tecton is like an advocate for her throughout this chapter, and I like that. Clock Blocker, he is also like an advocate for her, but is clearly in love. The fool, Dennis, he'll keep showing up and he'll keep getting rejected by Taylor. Oh, you know, skipping back to Jouster, I really do like the Jouster Hoyden Clock Blocker interaction when they're talking about Taylor's past deeds, etc. And how she's worth their time and worth having. I like that part. Um, really good character interactions. That's another thing. Like all these side character wards who we'll see like a couple times ever, like I just feel like they're so well drawn. Like I really get a sense of them in a very short amount of time. But you know, aside from all the things I said during the chapter, and all the times I made fun of Clockblocker, I guess I'd also say, aside from sticking up for Taylor specifically, I do think that he really believes in the PRT Protectorate Ward's overall structure, even with all the problems, and he's willing to go out of his way to like improve their capabilities by getting Taylor on their team, etc. So I think that he is very devoted to the cause of heroing, and we see that in sometimes subtle ways, I guess. But Jessica, she's here to facilitate. She helps out a bit. Traveling therapist. Some people think that she has superpowered therapy, but I would have to remind them that the powers can only they've got a penchant for destruction. They wouldn't want to give someone the power to soothe you. She's just a regular ass human. She doesn't have that much of a thing in this chapter. She will get a much bigger role later in this arc. That'll be nice to see. We'll move on to Defiant, to Colin, some would call him. He is trying his very best to relate to Taylor. He's like putting in tons and tons of effort. He is trying to, through relating his experiences, it seems like he's trying to explain his actions to Taylor and kind of be like a long-winded mea culpa when he's talking about like how he kind of screwed up his own life by like neglecting his personal time and so forth, and didn't have the chance to think things through. But all in all, for a person like him, he puts in tons of effort to get closer to Taylor this chapter. Bravo. We're all giving him a little golf clap. And our final character, Taylor. She has a lot of like indecision, I would say, in this chapter of like, well, not indecision exactly. She doesn't know how to handle these situations because all of her go-tos are barred options, which is true both socially and in the powers fight. So I guess in that way, the power restrictions mirror her heroic social restrictions. So that's interesting. And it is funny when she's paranoid about the other prisoners. They'll think I'm weak. I better do something insane to prove to them that I'm... Anyway. Powers, knowledge, and world building. We get to see tons of cool powers. Mechanically, we'll have to come back to like learning. We'll be retaught the ones that become important later, but like we will continue to see Hoyden in like later fights and stuff in any of the big group things. We got to meet some team leads from different places. And again, like Hoyden's power, I don't think I mentioned it, but it's like it's a defensive and offensive power in that like any attacks or powered attacks that come in toward Hoyden get a retaliatory explosion or series of explosions like erupting forth from Hoyden at the person. and Hoyden is mostly immune to powers, given that her power is canceling others out, and the further away she is from them, like, it improves with range. So, I don't know. Very cool power. We'll be happy to see it later. Like I said earlier, Vantage, like, the fact that he has, like, the mini teleports, I just find stuff like that so, like, cool. Let's see. So yeah, its Vantage had super strength, but his strength and reflexes scaled up as the number of opponents rose, with diminishing returns. He wasn't especially durable, but he packed short-range teleports. Very short range, a matter of 2 or 3 feet at best. He teleported to help close the gap to Swoop, and slammed one hand into the man's collarbone. But yeah, I think that's great. He's a Vegas cape. I think he is Vantage. Let me double check this. Vantage. Boop. Boop, 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 boop. Oh, I didn't mention, Vantage is the one who overhears Clock Blocker talking about bugs in his mouth and makes a face in it. Another good moment. Yeah, Vantage is from Las Vegas. I was right. And he is... You like the fact that he's this, like, showy cape, the fact that he needs people to focus on him to, like, get the super strength, basically. Like, I think that's a fun power. And then, it's also, like, funny that as he defeats people, he would theoretically get weaker, because there's, like, less people on the battlefield, focusing on him. What was I saying? Other powers. Yeah, Jouster's thing, like the slight super speed, all the elements through his lance, like, that's all cool. The butterfly thing is funny, and that's kind of a powers knowledge thing. The world building of seeing the New York headquarters is pretty cool. It's clear that Brockton Bay is kind of a shithole. Even before Leviathan was there, they did not get the best stuff in the way that New York does. They don't deserve it. They should have thought of that before they were born in not New York City. And yeah, it's, like, interesting to see how the sort of Cape team leaders are all talking to each other and all that. But I think we can move on from the powers knowledge and world building, despite how many cool powers, like Felix Swoops that we saw, like 13th Hour's knockout power, crazy hallucination thing, and of course Paddock's unstoppable power to summon millions of horses. They should have used that on an Endbringer. But yes, we can move on to audience participation. Which team of wards from the story would you want to join? And our existing answers are from Vic. I would probably want to join Tecton's team. Fighting in New York, transport, and Houston, heat, both sound miserable. And Tecton seems like a really good leader with a good head on his shoulders. I've also heard Chicago's pretty dope. I've never been there, but the people who live in Chicago seem to really like it there, which is not true of every city. Greg's response says, it's a bit hard to say because we don't see that many wards teams and most of them sound like varying degrees of headache. Who would want to be part of Brockton Bay wards? Career, dead end, if you compromise with the villains, bugs up your nose if you don't. If I'm forced to choose, I'd go with the original wards team with Chevalier, Miss Militia, and Mouse Protector. Not so much bureaucracy built up, wacky teammates, and big guns like Hero on standby if something goes really wrong. Thank goodness nothing will go wrong, right? Yeah, nothing ever goes wrong in Parahumans. It makes us so many bagels. Is so many bagels the response to Chicago? Well, Alien, if you're still there and have an answer that you can quickly jot down, I will read out your answer. But I would say the team of words from the ones. Vic says that's why I want to be in Chicago. Yes. I want to join the Houston Words teams because of my my very well thought out strategy. And highly courageous strategy too of whenever something bad happens, put Hoyden between me and the bad thing and sort of Z target rotate around her so that she's always in between me and the bad stuff. It's a very courageous way to fight, I think, actually. So yes, I would deal with Houston to have like that, because also some of the capes there, like, I don't know why I feel like I want to learn more about the capes that we see in the Echidna fight. It's like young buck, strapping lad, and like chronicler or something. I don't know. I think it'd be funny to be in the Texas teams. Yeah, I guess that's all we got for that. Also, Dispatch is dope. Vic says I love the Houston Capes, and I agree. They're so country. Having grown up here, maybe it would make me feel a little bit more at home. I think I would feel weird living in an East Coast city, if I'm being honest. Even going to Texas is too far east, really. But anyway, let's see here. So the next chapter is 23.2. I hadn't come up with a question, which I'm realizing now. And what would I 23.2. I'm trying to think of a good question for 23.2. It's the Vegas chapter. You know, it's set a lot earlier in the timeline, but given that they're talking about Vegas next chapter, I'm thinking about it. The We've Got Worm Weaver Dice thing that they did that's set in Las Vegas is pretty dang fun. I think if anyone has not listened to the existing recorded Weaver Dice stuff they did, it's worth giving a listen. Very interesting, strange characters in that. But including like the worst tinker you've ever met. He just makes like worthless devices. It's great. It's great. 23.2. What can I ask? I kind of feel like I want to ask about the like Taylor's bug restrictions and how people feel about that. I know that this is great content. Just me saying and thinking about what question to put next time. I think what I'm going to do, start up the old outro music and the speed draw, and then we'll just have to get the question between sessions. So, the music we're hearing now is As It Has Been for Several Weeks, Imago by ScarlettXOX. You can find her work at twitch.tv/Scarlett_Rogue. She has said that she's going to start streaming again, but only time will tell. It would be nice, but Our Discord server can be found at... Our Discord server link can be found in the description of the stream, as well as the channel description. The author of the work being discussed can be supported on Patreon at patreon.com/wildbow. The full text of the work discussed is available for free online at parahumans.wordpress.com. And there is also a fan-made audiobook of the entire work at audioworm.rain-online.org. Can I forget the Patreon link? It's Wildbow's Patreon is patreon.com/wildbow. If you want to support the author on the current works, Wildbow has continued to write serial works up to this point, and at this point, Worm's been done for 11 years, so there's a lot of other ones to read. If you're one of those readers, I don't know if anyone in this audience likes books or whatever. Words. Yeah. I do have several minutes while the song plays out to fret over the question, so I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna just wait out the last few minutes and think with all my thinking brain. Oh, you know what? I'll ask, what? Alright, so I did get the question. It's, how do you think the PRT handled the aftermath of a whole Protectorate team leaving? And... paste. Alright. Now goodbye, everyone. I will let the song play out.